Do you remember those soul food recipes that have all but vanished from our kitchens? The dishes that once filled tables with warmth, flavor, and family stories during the civil rights era? These meals weren't just food. They were comfort, tradition, and resilience on a plate. Let's take a look back at 30 forgotten soul foods that deserve to be remembered and celebrated. Collard greens with ham.
So today I will be showing you guys how to make collard greens. This is going to be absolutely delicious.
In the kitchens of the civil rights era, collard greens were more than just a side dish. They were a slow-simmered anthem of endurance. Long before farm to table became a marketing slogan, these sturdy, leafy greens were plucked straight from backyard gardens or bought in generous bundles at the local market. They came with a secret. The longer you cooked them, the better they got. And if you had a ham hock on hand, well, that was your golden ticket to flavor. A ham hock, essentially the pork shank left over after the better cuts had gone, was inexpensive, meaty, and rich with the smoky depth that turned a pot of collards into a meal worth lingering over. Preparation was less about precision and more about instinct. You'd wash the greens twice if you were wise, strip away the thick stems, and chop them into manageable ribbons. Into a big pot went the ham hock, water, and maybe an onion if one was lying around. The greens would join the party, wilting and darkening as they absorbed every ounce of savory richness. The pot liquor, that dark, flavorful broth left behind, wasn't just soup starter. It was treasured. People would sop it up with cornbread, and some swore it was more nourishing than the greens themselves. For many Black families during the 1960s, this dish wasn't simply about taste. It was about making the most of what you had, turning humble ingredients into a feast that could stretch across several meals. It was served after church, at family reunions, or as a comforting weekday dinner that reminded everyone that good food didn't require expensive cuts or fancy gadgets. Today, collard greens with ham hocks still show up in Southern kitchens, though sometimes the pork gets swapped for smoked turkey in the name of health. But the soul of the dish hasn't changed. It's still slow, still generous, and still better when shared. In an age when we measure cooking time in minutes, there's something quietly rebellious about letting a pot of greens simmer all afternoon, just as our grandparents did, filling the house with the scent of patience and pride. Hot water.
Welcome back, Fly Vegans. Today I'm going to give you my granny's recipe for hoe cakes. And here in the South, some people call them hot water cornbread.
Hot water cornbread is one of those recipes that looks impossibly simple on paper, yet holds generations of history in its golden, crispy edges. During the civil rights era, when grocery budgets were tight and every meal had to stretch, this humble bread was a lifesaver. No yeast, no oven, and certainly no fuss. Just cornmeal, salt, a splash of fat, and boiling water. That was the magic. The hot water woke up the cornmeal, binding it into a pliable dough that could be shaped by hand and fried in a skillet until each piece was crisp on the outside and tender inside. You didn't need much to make it happen. A cast iron skillet was essential, though not because it was trendy. Every kitchen had one. A bit of bacon grease or lard was the preferred cooking fat, both for flavor and because it was always on hand. The batter came together in minutes. Cornmeal in a bowl, a pinch of salt, and then the careful pour of boiling water, mixed just until it could be patted into rough cakes. There was no perfect shape. Some were neat rounds, others lopsided ovals, but all were equally welcome at the table. Hot water cornbread was more than just filler. It was a reliable partner to beans, greens, stews, or anything that produced a bit of broth. Dipping a piece into pot liquor from collard greens or the gravy from neck bones was a small luxury, the kind that turned a plain supper into something worth remembering. For many families, it was the everyday bread, quicker than biscuits and sturdier than sliced loaves from the store. In today's kitchens, hot water cornbread often appears at soul food restaurants or special gatherings, though it's still wonderfully easy to make at home. Some modern cooks swap in butter for bacon grease or even bake them for a lighter version, but the essence is the same. It's about coaxing flavor and comfort out of the simplest ingredients. Eating it fresh from the skillet, still hot enough to sting your fingers a little, is a direct direct line back to those kitchens of the 1960s, where resourcefulness was an art, and every meal was a quiet celebration of making do and making it delicious. Smothered pork chops? Smothered pork chops were the kind of dish that could stop conversation when the platter hit the table. In the civil rights era, they were a Sunday favorite, a centerpiece worthy of company but humble enough for a weeknight if the chops were on sale at the butcher. The beauty of the dish was in its name: pork chops browned until golden, then smothered in a thick, savory gravy that made every bite tender and rich. It was proof that with a little patience, even the leaner, cheaper cuts could be transformed into something luxurious. The process began with well-seasoned chops, salt, pepper, maybe a sprinkle of paprika, coated lightly in flour. A hot cast iron skillet did the heavy lifting, searing the meat until the edges crackled. But the magic really happened once the onions went in, softening in the leftover drippings, picking up all those caramelized bits stuck to the pan. Water or broth joined the party, whisked together with a little more flour to make a gravy that was equal parts silky and hearty. The chops were nestled back in, covered, and left to simmer slowly until they were so tender you could cut them with a fork. For many families in the 1960s, smothered pork chops were more than comfort food. They were a gesture of care. They took time. They required watching, stirring, tasting, adjusting. The smell filled the house, drifting into every corner, and by the time the lid came off the pot, everyone was ready to sit down together. Served with mashed potatoes, rice, or even just a slice of bread to sop up the gravy, it was a meal that left nothing behind but clean plates. Today, the dish still shows up in southern kitchens and soul food restaurants, though sometimes with a lighter gravy or boneless chops for convenience. But the soul of it remains the same: a slow, deliberate approach to turning modest ingredients into a feast. In an age of sheet pan dinners and microwave shortcuts, smothered pork chops are a reminder that flavor takes time and that a little gravy can make even the hardest day taste better. Chitlins or chitterlings are one of those dishes that divide a room before the first bite is even taken. In the civil rights era, they were far more than a culinary curiosity. They were a tradition rooted deep in history and survival. Made from the small intestines of pigs, chitlins were a byproduct of hog butchering, often given to enslaved people and later to poor families who couldn't afford the more prized cuts of meat. Out of necessity came ingenuity, and over generations, chitlins became a delicacy in many African American communities, especially during the holidays and at large family gatherings. Cooking chitlins was not for the impatient or the faint of heart. First, they had to be cleaned thoroughly, meticulously, some might say obsessively, until there was no trace of their barnyard origins. This process could take hours, often turning into a social event with family members gathered around, chatting, laughing, and swapping stories as they worked. Once cleaned, the chitlins were simmered slowly, often with onions, garlic, peppers, and a smoked ham hock or two for depth of flavor. The smell was unmistakable. Some would call it rich and savory, others less flattering, but for those who grew up with it, that aroma meant a special meal was on the way. Serving chitlins was a mark of hospitality and celebration. They'd appear at Christmas dinners, New Year's feasts, and sometimes after Sunday church, ladled onto plates alongside collard greens, cornbread, and sweet potatoes. Eating them wasn't just about taste. It was about honoring a resourcefulness passed down through generations, a reminder that no part of the animal went to waste when food was scarce. Today, chitlins are still prepared in some homes and soul food restaurants, though they've become rarer in everyday cooking. Modern health concerns and shifting tastes have led many to leave them in the past, but for those who keep the tradition alive, they're more than just food. They're a connection to ancestors who turned the least desirable parts into a feast, a culinary history lesson simmering in a pot. Love them or leave them, chitlins carry a legacy too rich to ignore. Lima beans and rice. Lima beans and rice was one of those quiet heroes of the civil rights era kitchen, a dish that didn't demand attention but always showed up when it was needed most. Cheap, filling, and endlessly adaptable, it made regular appearances on weeknight tables in both rural towns and bustling city neighborhoods. The ingredients were humble: dried lima beans, a little seasoning meat if you had it, onions, and plain white rice. But when cooked with care and a patient hand, they transformed into something far more satisfying than their their simplicity suggested. Dried beans were the usual starting point because they cost next to nothing and could feed a crowd. They'd be rinsed, picked over for pebbles, and left to soak overnight. In the morning, the pot went on the stove, the beans simmering low and slow with the ham hock, smoked turkey neck, or even just a splash of bacon grease to give them depth. The smell would fill the house, earthy and savory, letting everyone know dinner was well on its way. On the back burner, rice was cooking, nothing fancy, just plain and fluffy, ready to soak up every drop of the bean broth. In the 1960s, this dish was more than just a frugal choice. It was a strategy for survival. Meat was expensive, and stretching it across multiple meals meant making beans the star. Lima beans brought more than protein. They brought comfort. They were warm, hearty, and tasted even better the next day, making them perfect for reheating after long work shifts or busy school nights. Around the table, lima beans and rice encouraged a slower pace. You couldn't rush through a plate. You took your time, mixing the beans into the rice, letting the flavors blend. It was food that filled you up, body and spirit. Today, the dish still pops up in southern kitchens, though it's often overshadowed by flashier meals. But its charm endures for those who remember. In a world obsessed with novelty, lima beans and rice stand as a quiet reminder that comfort doesn't have to be complicated, and sometimes the most ordinary ingredients can tell the most extraordinary stories. Fried catfish. Fried catfish was more than a meal during the civil rights era. It was an event. In towns across the South, it often meant a gathering by the riverbank or a weekend fish fry where neighbors, church members, and family came together. Catfish was plentiful, inexpensive, and willing to take on whatever flavors the cook brought to it. Freshly caught fish would be cleaned right there on the bank, scaled if needed, and packed on ice until it was time to head to the kitchen or the outdoor fryer. By the time the oil was hot, the air was already filled with the chatter of people who had been waiting all week for this. The preparation was straightforward but sacred. Fillets or whole fish would get a quick soak in buttermilk or seasoned water, then dredged in a mix of cornmeal, salt, pepper, and sometimes a pinch of cayenne for kick. The cornmeal coating was the secret to that perfect crunch. Light, golden, and crisp enough to crackle when you bit into it. Cast iron skillets or large outdoor fryers turned out batch after batch, each one disappearing faster than it could cool. In the 1960s, fried catfish was about more than feeding a crowd. It was a symbol of resourcefulness and celebration rolled into one. Catching your own meant you weren't relying on the grocery store, and frying it up for friends and neighbors was a way of sharing abundance. At church picnics or civil rights fundraisers, platters of catfish would sit alongside hush puppies, coleslaw, and pitchers of sweet tea, feeding both body and spirit. Today, fried catfish still has a place in southern kitchens and restaurants, though it's often seen as a special treat rather than an everyday meal. Some cooks swap the deep fryer for an air fryer. Others add modern spice blends. But the essence hasn't changed. It's still about that shattering crunch, the tender, flaky fish inside, and the way it brings people together. One bite, and you're back at that long picnic table under the trees, the sound of laughter mixing with the sizzle from the fryer, knowing you've got something worth slowing down for. Sweet potato pie. Sweet potato pie was the crown jewel of many tables during the civil rights era, a dessert that carried both history and heart in every slice. Long before pumpkin pie took over grocery store shelves in the fall, sweet potato pie was the dessert of choice in African American kitchens across the South. Its roots ran deep, straight back to West African culinary traditions, where yams and other tubers were cherished staples. In the United States, sweet potatoes were abundant, affordable, and easy to store, making them the perfect foundation for a dessert that could be both simple and celebratory. The process began with baking or boiling the sweet potatoes until they were soft enough to mash into a silky puree. This golden mash was blended with sugar, eggs, milk, butter, and a warm blend of spices: cinnamon, nutmeg, maybe a pinch of ginger. Some cooks swore by evaporated milk for a creamier texture. Others insisted on fresh. The mixture was poured into a flaky homemade crust, often rolled out on a kitchen table dusted with flour, and baked until the filling set and the top took on a gentle caramelized sheen. In the 1960s, sweet potato pie wasn't just a dessert. It was a marker of family gatherings and special occasions. occasions. Thanksgiving tables weren't complete without it, and it often appeared at Christmas, Sunday dinners, and church socials. Every family seemed to have their own version, with slight differences that sparked friendly debates over whose pie reigned supreme. Today, sweet potato pie has found a wider audience, but it still holds a sacred place in the tradition of soul food. While store-bought versions exist, nothing compares to the aroma of one baking in a home kitchen, filling the air with the scent of sweet potatoes and spice. One forkful delivers more than flavor. It offers a connection to generations who knew how to turn the humblest ingredients into something extraordinary. Sweet potato pie is more than dessert. It's a slice of history, a warm reminder that sweetness can be born from simplicity and that some traditions are too good to leave in the past. Okra stew. Okra stew was one of those dishes that carried the warmth of tradition in every spoonful, a recipe that linked the kitchens of the civil rights era to centuries-old African culinary roots. Okra itself made the journey from West Africa to the American South through the transatlantic slave trade, becoming a staple in many African-American households. By the 1960s, it was as familiar in the kitchen as salt and pepper, especially in regions where backyard gardens and local markets overflowed with the bright green pods in summer. Stewed with tomatoes, onions, and sometimes peppers or corn, it was a humble, hearty dish that could stretch to feed a family without draining the pantry. The preparation was simple but deliberate. Fresh okra was rinsed, trimmed, and sliced into rounds that revealed its signature seeds and mucilaginous texture, a feature some loved and others politely ignored. In a heavy pot, onions and peppers softened in a bit of fat, releasing their sweetness before chopped tomatoes joined the mix. The okra was added last, simmering until it thickened the stew naturally, giving it a body and richness that didn't require flour or starch. A piece of smoked meat or a dash of cayenne might slip in, depending on the cook's taste and what the pantry offered. During the civil rights era, okra stew was as much about practicality as it was about flavor. It was a way to make use of whatever was in season or on hand, often eaten with cornbread, or served over rice to make it a filling main dish. In many households, it was a comfort food, warm, nourishing, and deeply tied to family routines. Today, okra stew still finds its way onto Southern tables, though it's just as likely to appear in farm-to-table restaurants that celebrate its heritage. Modern cooks might roast the okra first to tame its texture, or add global spices for a new twist, but the heart of the dish remains the same. It's still about coaxing rich flavor from simple ingredients and honoring a vegetable that has fed generations. One bowl is enough to remind you why some recipes never fade. They adapt, but they never truly leave. Cornbread dressing. Cornbread dressing was the soul of many holiday tables during the civil rights era, a dish that didn't just accompany the main event, it often stole the show. Long before box stuffing mixes lined grocery store shelves, dressing was made from scratch, starting with a pan of homemade cornbread. This wasn't the sweet, cake-like kind. It was sturdy, golden, and just crumbly enough to soak up the rich flavors that would come later. Leftover biscuits or day-old bread sometimes joined the mix, not out of wastefulness, but as a way to add texture and stretch the recipe to feed a crowd. The process began days before the meal itself. Cornbread was baked and set aside to dry slightly, ensuring it would hold its own when combined with broth. On cooking day, onions and celery were sautéed in butter or rendered fat until tender and fragrant. The cornbread was crumbled into a large bowl joined by the vegetables, plenty of seasoning, sage being the star, and enough broth to bring everything together into a moist but not soggy mixture. Some cooks added chopped boiled eggs or bits of cooked chicken for extra richness, while others swore by keeping it pure and simple. The mixture was spread into a baking dish and cooked until the top was golden brown and the edges crisped just right. In the 1960s, cornbread dressing wasn't reserved for Thanksgiving alone. It appeared at Christmas dinners, Easter feasts, and sometimes even Sunday gatherings, especially when a big meal was in order. It was a dish that carried the comfort of home, no matter where home happened to be. Around the table, it sparked conversations, laughter, and sometimes debates about whose recipe was best, though everyone knew the truth was that each family's version was the best to them. Today, cornbread dressing still holds a place of honor in Southern and soul food cooking. While modern shortcuts exist, the magic remains begins in making it the old way, with care, patience, and a skillet of fresh-baked cornbread. Every forkful carries the flavors of family, tradition, and gatherings where the food was more than just a meal. It was a celebration of togetherness. Hoppin' John. Hoppin' John is a dish steeped in history, symbolism, and comfort. A simple combination of black-eyed peas, rice, and seasoning that carried deep meaning during the civil rights era and long before it. Its roots trace back to the Gullah Geechee people of the Low Country, descendants of enslaved Africans who brought their agricultural knowledge and culinary traditions to the American South. By the 1960s, Hoppin' John was well established as both an everyday meal and a New Year's Day ritual, eaten in the belief that it would bring good luck and prosperity in the year ahead. Each black-eyed pea represented a coin, and the rice symbolized abundance, a hopeful message that resonated powerfully during times of struggle. The preparation was humble and efficient. Dried black-eyed peas were soaked and then simmered slowly with a piece of smoked pork, ham hock, bacon, or salt pork, infusing the broth with deep, savory flavor. Onion, celery, and sometimes a bit of bell pepper were added to round out the aroma, while cayenne or hot sauce brought gentle heat. Once the peas were tender, they were served over or mixed directly into a pot of white rice, creating a dish that was hearty enough to be the main event and inexpensive enough to make regularly. In the civil rights era, Hoppin' John was a staple for many Black families, especially in the South, not only for its affordability, but for the sense of continuity it offered. At a time when the fight for equality was at the forefront of daily life, serving a dish with such deep cultural roots was a quiet act of preservation and pride. It connected generations, from ancestors who first cooked it under vastly different circumstances to families gathered in kitchens decades later. Today, Hoppin' John still appears on many Southern tables, especially at the turn of the year, though modern variations might swap smoked turkey for pork or use brown rice for a healthier twist. Still, the essence remains untouched. It is a dish about hope, resilience, and the belief that something as humble as a bowl of peas and rice can carry you forward. One spoonful is a taste of history, tradition, and optimism all at once. Pig's feet. Pig's feet were once a fixture in many kitchens during the civil rights era, a testament to the frugality, creativity, and deep flavor traditions that defined soul food cooking. Long before nose to tail became a culinary trend, Black families were making the most of every part of the hog, and pig's feet, cheap, flavorful, and rich in collagen, were transformed into dishes that could feed a crowd without emptying the pocketbook. They weren't considered fancy, but in the right hands, they became a slow-cooked delicacy that filled the home with a savory aroma and promised a meal worth waiting for. The preparation began with a thorough cleaning, often followed by a quick parboil to remove impurities. From there, the feet were simmered for hours in a seasoned broth, usually with onion, garlic, bay leaves, and a generous dose of black pepper. Some cooks added vinegar for tang, others leaned on smoked meat or chili flakes for a deeper kick. The slow cooking coaxed the meat and skin into melting tenderness, the gelatin-rich broth thickening naturally into a sauce that clung to every bite. The result was sticky, savory, and deeply satisfying, best enjoyed with cornbread to mop up the juices. In the 1960s, pig's feet were more than just a meal. They were a symbol of resourcefulness. They turned what many considered scraps into a centerpiece, proving that good cooking was less about expensive ingredients and more about skill, patience, and seasoning. They often appeared at Sunday dinners, community gatherings, or even as a special treat after a long work week, offering both nourishment and a sense of continuity with the past. Today, pig's feet have largely stepped out of the everyday rotation, appearing mostly in traditional soul food restaurants or at family events where the old recipes are honored. Modern diners sometimes rediscover them as a heritage dish, but for those who grew up with them, they're far more than a culinary curiosity. Each plate carries the memory of crowded tables, the sound of laughter over shared meals, and the quiet pride of making something extraordinary from what others might have overlooked. Pig's feet aren't just food, they're history you can taste. Gumbo. Gumbo is more than just a dish. It's a story simmered in a pot, a living record of cultures colliding and creating something uniquely their own. By the civil rights era, gumbo was already a celebrated staple in many African American households. households, especially in Louisiana and along the Gulf Coast. Its origins are a tapestry woven from West African, French, Spanish, and Native American influences, each thread adding to the complexity of its flavor. Okra, introduced from Africa, often played a starring role, giving the stew its name and its signature texture, while filet powder from the Choctaw people added a distinctive earthiness. In the 1960s, gumbo wasn't just a special occasion dish, it was a reason to gather. The cooking process was slow and deliberate, starting with a dark roux made from flour and fat, whisked patiently until it reached the color of chocolate. This base gave the gumbo its depth, and from there the pot could take on many personalities: chicken and sausage, seafood, or a combination of both, depending on what was available or affordable. Onions, bell peppers, and celery, the holy trinity of Creole cooking, formed the aromatic backbone, while garlic, bay leaves, and cayenne pepper layered in warmth and spice. Okra or filet powder thickened the broth, and the whole mixture simmered for hours, the flavors melding into something that could only be achieved with time and care. Gumbo was ladled generously over rice, turning a humble grain into a canvas for rich, complex flavors. A pot could feed a family for days, making it both economical and deeply satisfying. During the civil rights era, gumbo carried more than just taste. It carried a sense of resilience and community. Sharing a pot meant more than feeding mouths. It meant sustaining spirits. In church basements, neighborhood kitchens, and family gatherings, gumbo was a reminder that joy and comfort could still be found even in turbulent times. Today, gumbo still inspires debate about the right way to make it, but that's part of its charm. It's a dish that invites variation, welcomes adaptation, and refuses to be pinned down to one recipe. At its heart, gumbo remains what it always was: a warm, flavorful embrace served one bowl at a time. Sweet tea. Sweet tea wasn't just a drink during the civil rights era. It was a constant presence, as much a part of the Southern table as cornbread or collard greens. Served in mason jars, tall glasses, or even chipped mugs, it was the kind of refreshment that marked the rhythm of daily life. Whether you were coming in from a long day's work, sitting on the porch catching a breeze, or hosting a Sunday dinner, there was almost always a pitcher in the refrigerator or on the counter, beads of condensation rolling down its sides. The process was simple, but in many households it bordered on ritual. Black tea bags were steeped in boiling water until the brew turned deep amber, strong enough to hold its own against the generous scoop or two of sugar that followed. The sugar was always added while the tea was hot, ensuring it dissolved completely, creating that signature smooth sweetness. Once the base was ready, it was poured into a pitcher, diluted with cold water, and chilled until it was icy and refreshing. Some families added lemon slices for a touch of brightness, while others insisted on keeping it pure. In the 1960s, sweet tea was more than a beverage. It was hospitality in liquid form. Offering someone a glass was a way of saying, "You're welcome here, sit a while." It flowed freely at community gatherings, church picnics, and civil rights meetings, quenching thirst while conversations stretched long into the evening. It was affordable, easy to make in large quantities, and universally loved, except perhaps by the rare visitor unaccustomed to its bold sweetness. Today, sweet tea is still a Southern icon, though bottled and fast food versions have made it more widely available. Yet there's a certain magic in the homemade kind, brewed in a kitchen that smells faintly of steeping tea and sugar, poured into a glass packed with ice so cold it crackles. It's a taste that connects generations, from front porches in the past to backyard barbecues today. Sweet tea isn't just something you drink, it's a slow sip of tradition, a reminder that sometimes the simplest things can carry the most comfort. Black-eyed pea salad. Black-eyed pea salad is the kind of dish that doesn't shout for attention but earns it quietly, one bite at a time. During the civil rights era, it was a staple at church picnics, neighborhood gatherings, and family reunions, a dish that could be made ahead, traveled well, and stretched to feed a crowd without costing much. Its roots run deep in Southern food traditions, where black-eyed peas had long been a symbol of luck, resilience, and resourcefulness. For generations, they were valued not just for their taste, but for their ability to grow in tough conditions, making them a reliable crop in both lean and abundant years. The salad began with cooked black-eyed peas, tender but not mushy, their earthy flavor forming the heart of the dish. They were often paired with chopped smoked bell peppers, onions, celery, and tomatoes, creating a colorful mix that was as appealing to the eyes as it was to the palate. A tangy vinaigrette made with oil, vinegar, a touch of sugar, and a dash of salt and pepper brought everything together, soaking into the peas and vegetables until every bite was bright and flavorful. Some cooks added jalapenos or hot sauce for a little heat, while others preferred to keep it mild and refreshing. In the 1960s, this salad was as much about practicality as taste. It could be served cold or at room temperature, which meant no worrying about it spoiling during a long afternoon outdoors. It also made the most of affordable seasonal produce and pantry staples, reflecting the frugal creativity of home cooks at the time. At gatherings, it often sat alongside fried chicken, cornbread, and sweet tea, a lighter counterpoint to richer, heavier dishes. Today, black-eyed pea salad still holds its own, even in a world of kale quinoa bowls and trendy avocado toasts. It's naturally high in protein and fiber, making it as modern-friendly as it is old-fashioned. But more than that, it carries with it the spirit of community and tradition, a reminder that the best recipes don't just fill your stomach, they connect you to a table where stories are told, laughter is shared, and history is passed on in every spoonful. Red beans and rice is more than just a comfort food. It's a dish woven into the rhythm of Southern life, especially in places like Louisiana, where tradition and necessity went hand in hand. During the civil rights era, it was as common in home kitchens as the morning newspaper, a dependable Monday meal that stretched groceries, filled bellies, and made use of what was already on hand. In many families, Monday was laundry day, which meant the cook of the house needed something that could simmer slowly without much fuss. Red beans and rice fit the bill perfectly, hearty, flavorful, and economical. The process began with dried red beans, soaked overnight to soften them, then simmered low and slow until tender. Smoked sausage, ham hocks, or leftover pork bones were often added for depth and richness, turning the beans into a savory, almost creamy stew. Aromatics like onions, bell peppers, and celery, the famed holy trinity of Cajun and Creole cooking, were sautéed first, filling the kitchen with a scent that announced something good was on the way. Seasonings like bay leaves, garlic, and a dash of cayenne gave the pot its unmistakable warmth, while patience allowed all the flavors to meld. In the 1960s, this dish was a workhorse in the weekly meal rotation. It used inexpensive staples and could feed a crowd without much expense. Served over fluffy white rice, it became a complete meal. Protein, carbs, and comfort all in one bowl. Leftovers weren't just tolerated, they were prized, as the flavors deepened overnight, making the next day's serving even better. Red beans and rice also carried a cultural heartbeat. It was served at family tables, community gatherings, and sometimes even after church services, offering nourishment in more ways than one. In the civil rights era, when communities leaned on each other for strength, a pot of red beans could bring neighbors together, offering both sustenance and solidarity. Today, it remains a beloved classic, equally at home in a home kitchen or a bustling New Orleans restaurant. While modern versions might swap smoked meats for turkey sausage or even go vegetarian, the soul of the dish hasn't changed. A slow-cooked reminder that simple ingredients, given time and care, can become something extraordinary. Baked macaroni and cheese. Baked macaroni and cheese has long held a special place at the table, especially during the civil rights era when it became a beloved staple in African American households. It was more than a side dish. It was comfort, celebration, and ingenuity all rolled into one golden, cheesy casserole. In kitchens where budgets were tight and every ingredient counted, macaroni and cheese provided a way to feed a family with simple pantry staples while still delivering a sense of abundance and warmth. The dish began with elbow macaroni, boiled until tender but still firm enough to hold the rich sauce. The cheese sauce was the heart of the recipe, made from shredded cheddar or a mix of cheeses, melted with milk or cream and a little butter, thickened with flour, or simply stirred until smooth. Some cooks added a pinch of mustard or cayenne to give it a gentle bite, while others relied relied solely on the creamy, savory flavor of the cheese itself. The cooked pasta was combined with the sauce, poured into a buttered baking dish, and topped with more cheese or breadcrumbs for a golden, bubbling crust. Then it went into the oven until the top was perfectly browned and the edges slightly crispy. In the 1960s, baked macaroni and cheese was versatile enough to appear at Sunday dinners, church potlucks, and holiday meals. It could serve as a side to fried chicken or meatloaf, or stand alone as a satisfying main for a frugal weeknight supper. It was the kind of dish that could stretch a modest amount of cheese and milk to feed a hungry family, embodying both practicality and indulgence. Today, baked macaroni and cheese remains a favorite comfort food across the South and beyond. While modern variations experiment with gourmet cheeses, truffle oil, or even lobster, the essence of the dish remains unchanged. Creamy, cheesy pasta that warms the heart and the home. Each forkful is a reminder of kitchens filled with laughter, the smell of melted cheese, and the simple joy of turning humble ingredients into something extraordinary. Baked macaroni and cheese isn't just food, it's a celebration of resourcefulness, flavor, and the enduring power of comfort. Turnip greens.
Hey friends, who's hungry? Nothing says Southern like a big old pot of turnip greens. Let me show you how I make mine.
Turnip greens were a cornerstone of Southern kitchens during the Civil Rights era, a humble, leafy green that carried both nourishment and tradition in every bite. Often overlooked today in favor of more trendy vegetables, turnip greens were once a daily staple, prized for their ability to feed a family affordably while delivering bold, satisfying flavor. Their slightly bitter edge was balanced perfectly with the richness of smoked meats, creating a dish that was hearty, comforting, and deeply tied to African-American culinary heritage. The preparation of turnip greens was simple in concept, but precise in execution. The leaves were washed thoroughly to remove grit, then chopped into manageable pieces. A pot was heated with a bit of fat, usually bacon grease, lard, or a smoked ham hock, and onions were sautéed until fragrant. The greens were added gradually, wilting down into the flavorful drippings. A splash of water or broth helped them cook evenly, while seasonings like salt, black pepper, and a dash of cayenne enhanced their natural earthiness. The greens simmered slowly, often for an hour or more, until tender and infused with the smoky, savory essence of the meat. The resulting dish was dark, rich, and slightly tangy, a perfect counterpoint to cornbread or rice that would often accompany it. In the 1960s, turnip greens were more than just a side. They were a marker of resourcefulness and resilience. Families used every part of the pig and paired it with whatever greens were in season, ensuring nothing went to waste. Serving turnip greens was also an act of love, a way to provide sustenance while honoring the culinary traditions passed down through generations. At Sunday dinners, holiday feasts, and everyday meals alike, the dish brought both flavor and a sense of continuity to the table. Today, turnip greens still hold a place in soul food cooking, though they are less common in modern supermarkets and meal plans. Those who continue to prepare them honor the legacy of a vegetable that nourished families through hardship and celebration alike. Each bite is a connection to the past, a reminder that with patience, creativity, and a little smoke, even the simplest ingredients can be transformed into a dish that is bold, comforting, and unforgettable. Candied yams.
Candied yams might be the perfect holiday side dish. Ultra easy, super quick, and who could say no to brown sugar, butter, and spices completely enrobing these delicious yams?
Candied yams were a quintessential dish during the Civil Rights era, gracing holiday tables, Sunday dinners, and family gatherings with their warm sweetness and comforting aroma. They were more than just a side. They were a celebration of the sweet potato, a humble, versatile vegetable that could be transformed into a luxurious dish with just a handful of pantry staples. In African-American households, candied yams symbolized both ingenuity and abundance, taking a simple ingredient and elevating it into a dish that felt like a treat. The preparation was straightforward, yet it required care and attention. Large, firm, sweet potatoes were peeled and sliced into uniform rounds or cubes, ensuring even cooking. These were arranged in a baking dish and covered in a mixture of sugar, butter, and sometimes brown sugar or molasses, which caramelized during baking to form a luscious, sticky sticky glaze. A touch of cinnamon, nutmeg, or allspice often enhanced the flavor, adding warmth and a hint of complexity. Some cooks added a splash of orange juice or a pinch of salt to balance the sweetness, while others included marshmallows on top, letting them melt into a golden, pillowy crust. The dish was baked slowly until the yams were tender and the syrup bubbling, filling the kitchen with an aroma that was both sweet and earthy. During the 1960s, candied yams were a symbol of home and celebration. They appeared at Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners, often alongside roast meats, greens, and cornbread. The dish was accessible, yet it carried an air of festivity, proving that a simple root vegetable could become the highlight of the meal with a little care and imagination. Families took pride in their recipes, sometimes passed down through generations, each adding their own touches or secret ingredients. Today, candied yams remain a beloved element of soul food cuisine, appearing on holiday menus and at family gatherings across the country. Modern cooks may adjust the sweetness, swap butter for margarine, or experiment with spices, but the essence of the dish endures: tender, sweet, and richly flavored yams that celebrate both tradition and creativity. Every bite is a reminder of kitchens filled with warmth, the slow hum of ovens, and the enduring joy of turning simple ingredients into something unforgettable. Neck bones and gravy. Neck bones and gravy were a cornerstone of soul food kitchens during the Civil Rights era, a dish that embodied resourcefulness, flavor, and the warmth of home cooking. Pork neck bones, often overlooked by some, were a treasure in the hands of a skilled cook. They were inexpensive, rich in flavor, and perfect for creating a hearty, comforting meal that could feed a family without breaking the budget. The bones themselves carried a depth of taste that transformed simple ingredients into a dish that felt indulgent and satisfying. Preparation began with seasoning the neck bones generously with salt, pepper, and sometimes paprika or cayenne for a hint of heat. In a large pot, the bones were browned in a little fat, either rendered from the meat itself or supplemented with lard or oil until they developed a deep, savory crust. Onions, garlic, and bell peppers were added to the pot, sautéed until fragrant, creating a foundation of flavor. Water or broth joined the mixture, simmering slowly for hours, allowing the collagen and marrow from the bones to enrich the liquid. By the end, the simmering liquid had transformed into a glossy, rich gravy, full-bodied and flavorful, ready to be poured over rice, mashed potatoes, or even slices of cornbread. In the 1960s, neck bones and gravy were more than sustenance. They were a statement of ingenuity and pride. Families made the most of every part of the hog, turning humble cuts into a centerpiece that could nourish both body and soul. The aroma of the gravy simmering in the kitchen drew everyone in, signaling that a warm, satisfying meal was ready to bring people together. Today, neck bones and gravy remain a beloved dish in Southern and soul food cuisine, though fewer households prepare it regularly. Modern variations may include different seasonings, longer braising for tenderness, or pairing with contemporary sides. But the essence remains unchanged, a labor of love that extracts maximum flavor from modest ingredients. Each bite is a reminder of the creativity, patience, and care that defined the kitchens of the Civil Rights era. A taste of tradition that continues to comfort and inspire. Fried okra.
I'm gonna show you guys today how to make Southern fried okra.
Fried okra was a staple of Southern kitchens during the Civil Rights era, a dish that combined simplicity, texture, and deep, savory flavor. Okra itself was already a familiar and beloved vegetable introduced to the American South from West Africa and quickly embraced for its resilience and versatility. When fried, it transformed into something irresistible, crispy on the outside, tender on the inside, with a subtle, earthy taste that paired perfectly with a hint of seasoning. It was the kind of side dish that could turn an ordinary meal into a memorable one, and it often stole the spotlight at Sunday dinners, family gatherings, and neighborhood picnics. The preparation was deceptively simple. Fresh okra was rinsed and trimmed, then sliced into bite-sized pieces. The slices were tossed in cornmeal, sometimes combined with a little flour, salt, and pepper, creating a light coating that would crisp beautifully in hot oil. The okra was then fried in a cast iron skillet or deep fryer until golden brown, the sound of sizzling signaling that the dish was nearly ready. Drained on paper towels, the fried okra maintained a delicate crunch while keeping the vegetable soft inside, offering a satisfying texture that could be addictive. Some cooks added a pinch of cayenne or a dusting of paprika to give the dish a little extra warmth and depth. During the 1960s, fried okra was as much about comfort as it was about practicality. It was inexpensive, easy to prepare in large batches, and could complement nearly any main dish, from fried chicken to roasted pork or a simple Sunday roast. The aroma of frying okra often filled homes, drawing family members into the kitchen and creating a sense of anticipation that made the meal feel special. Today, fried okra remains a cherished part of Southern and soul food traditions, appearing on restaurant menus and at family tables alike. While modern variations might experiment with air frying or alternative coatings, the essence of the dish endures. A simple vegetable elevated through careful preparation, patience, and love. Each crispy, golden bite is a reminder of kitchens filled with laughter, the warmth of shared meals, and the timeless pleasure of turning humble ingredients into something extraordinary. Chicken and dumplings.
Chicken and dumplings is a dish that I didn't grow up eating, but when I eat it now as an adult, I somehow gush with nostalgia.
Chicken and dumplings was a cornerstone of Southern kitchens during the Civil Rights era, a dish that offered comfort, warmth, and sustenance in every bowl. It was the kind of meal that could feed a family generously without requiring extravagant ingredients, making it a practical choice in homes where resources were tight. The dish married tender chicken with soft, pillowy dumplings in a rich, flavorful broth, creating a meal that was both hearty and soothing. It was more than food. It was a culinary hug, a reminder that even simple ingredients could be transformed into something extraordinary with patience and care. The preparation began with simmering a whole chicken or pieces like thighs and legs in a pot of water, seasoned with salt, pepper, and aromatic vegetables such as onions, carrots, and celery. As the chicken cooked, it released flavors that formed the base of the broth, infusing it with depth and richness. Meanwhile, dumplings were made from a simple dough of flour, baking powder, salt, and a little fat or milk, rolled or dropped by spoonfuls into the simmering broth. The dumplings cooked gently atop the chicken, absorbing the savory liquid and swelling into soft, tender pillows. Some cooks added a touch of cream or butter at the end for extra richness, while others kept it simple, letting the natural flavors shine. During the 1960s, chicken and dumplings was a dish of both necessity and celebration. It was perfect for Sunday dinners, community gatherings, or a nourishing weekday meal, offering a complete plate of protein and carbohydrates that satisfied both hunger and the soul. The act of making it was often communal, with family members chatting and sharing stories as the dumplings were prepared and added to the pot, fostering connection and warmth around the kitchen. Today, chicken and dumplings remains a cherished part of soul food traditions, often appearing on family tables and in Southern restaurants. Modern cooks may experiment with herbs, spices, or alternative flours, but the heart of the dish endures. Tender chicken, comforting dumplings, and a broth that tastes of patience, love, and tradition. Every bowl is a reminder of kitchens filled with laughter, the simple joy of shared meals, and the enduring power of comfort food. Hush puppies.
Do not hand me a platter of fried seafood without extra hush puppies on it.
Hush puppies were a beloved fixture of Southern tables during the Civil Rights era. Small golden nuggets of fried cornmeal that could accompany everything from fried fish to barbecue. Simple, inexpensive, and irresistibly crunchy on the outside while tender on the inside, they were a testament to the ingenuity of cooks who could turn a few pantry staples into a dish that felt festive and satisfying. Their origins are part legend and part practicality. Some say they were tossed to quiet barking dogs during fish fries, while others insist they were simply a clever way to use leftover cornmeal batter. Either way, hush puppies became an iconic part of soul food cuisine, celebrated for their flavor, texture, and charm. Preparation was straightforward but precise. Cornmeal was mixed with a little flour, salt, and sometimes sugar for a hint of sweetness. Baking powder or soda helped them puff slightly during frying, while finely chopped onions, scallions, or peppers were added to give a subtle depth of flavor. Liquid, usually buttermilk, milk, or water was incorporated until the batter reached a thick, droppable consistency. Oil was heated in a cast iron skillet or deep fryer, and spoonfuls of the batter were carefully lowered into the hot oil, sizzling and browning in minutes. The hush puppies were removed once golden and crisp, drained briefly, and served hot, their aroma filling the kitchen or backyard with a promise of simple indulgence. In the 1960s, hush puppies were more than a side. They were a social food. Fish fries, neighborhood gatherings, and church suppers often revolved around platters of hush puppies, inviting everyone to reach in and enjoy. They were inexpensive to make in large batches, versatile enough to complement fried catfish, chicken, or barbecue, and appealing to both children and adults alike. Today, hush puppies remain a beloved classic, appearing in soul food restaurants, family dinners, and festival food stands across the South. Some modern versions experiment with spices, cheese, or corn kernels, but the essence is unchanged. A crunchy, flavorful treat born of practicality and elevated by care. Each bite is a reminder of kitchens filled with laughter, community, and the timeless joy of turning humble ingredients into something extraordinary. Sweet potato biscuit.
So today I'm making sweet potato biscuits. It's January, it's gloomy.
Sweet potato biscuits were a cherished part of Southern kitchens during the Civil Rights era, a comforting and subtly sweet twist on a classic staple, combining the natural sweetness and moisture of mashed sweet potatoes with the flakiness of a traditional biscuit. These treats offered a versatile accompaniment to breakfast, dinner, or even as a snack. They embodied the resourcefulness of home cooks who could take humble ingredients, stretch them further, and create something both nourishing and memorable. Sweet potatoes were abundant, affordable, and easy to store, making them a perfect base for a biscuit that could elevate any meal. The preparation began by boiling or baking sweet potatoes until tender, then mashing them into a smooth, creamy consistency. Flour, baking powder, salt, and a touch of sugar were combined with the sweet potato, along with butter or shortening to create a rich, tender dough. Some recipes incorporated a bit of milk or buttermilk to achieve the ideal balance of moisture and fluffiness. The dough was gently kneaded, rolled out, and cut into rounds, or dropped by spoonfuls onto a baking sheet. As they baked, the biscuits rose and browned, filling the kitchen with a sweet, earthy aroma that hinted at the flavor to come. During the 1960s, sweet potato biscuits were a versatile and beloved addition to meals. They paired beautifully with fried chicken, ham, or collard greens, and their slight sweetness contrasted delightfully with savory dishes. Families often made them in large batches, enjoying them warm from the oven with butter, honey, or molasses. The biscuits were not only a treat for the taste buds, but also a marker of care and hospitality, signaling a meal made with attention and love. Today, sweet potato biscuits continue to honor Southern and soul food traditions. Modern cooks may experiment with spices like cinnamon or nutmeg, or even incorporate cheeses or herbs, but the essence remains unchanged. A tender, slightly sweet biscuit that brings warmth, flavor, and comfort. Each bite connects the present to a culinary past, evoking kitchens filled with laughter, family gatherings, and the enduring ingenuity of cooks who turned simple ingredients into unforgettable meals. Stewed tomatoes and okra. Stewed tomatoes and okra was a classic Southern dish during the Civil Rights era, a humble yet flavorful combination that showcased the ingenuity and resourcefulness of home cooks. Both vegetables were staples in African-American households, easy to grow in backyard gardens and affordable to purchase at local markets. When cooked together, they created a dish that was hearty, nourishing, and bursting with both flavor and tradition. It was a dish that could stand on its own over rice or accompany fried meats, serving as a reminder that simple ingredients handled with care could create something extraordinary. Preparation began with fresh, ripe tomatoes, peeled and chopped, their natural acidity forming the base of the stew. Onions, garlic, and bell peppers were often sautéed in a little fat, bacon grease, lard, or oil to release their aromatic sweetness before the tomatoes were added. Okra, sliced into rounds, joined the pot, releasing its characteristic mucilaginous texture that that naturally thickened the stew. Seasonings such as salt, black pepper, and cayenne were added to taste, while a dash of sugar or a splash of vinegar could balance the flavors. The mixture was simmered slowly, allowing the vegetables to meld together, producing a rich, slightly tangy stew with a comforting, velvety texture. In the 1960s, stewed tomatoes and okra was more than just a side. It was a reflection of both tradition and practicality. Families relied on it to stretch ingredients, nourish children, and add variety to meals without relying on expensive or hard-to-find items. Served over white rice or alongside cornbread, it became a complete, satisfying meal, demonstrating the creativity and resilience of cooks who worked with what they had. Today, stewed tomatoes and okra remains a beloved dish in Southern and soul food cooking. Modern adaptations may incorporate additional spices or fresh herbs, but the essence of the dish endures. A slow-cooked blend of fresh vegetables that celebrates flavor, tradition, and the enduring skill of transforming simple ingredients into a dish that comforts both body and soul. Each bite is a taste of history, a reminder of kitchens filled with warm care and community. Cracklin bread. Cracklin bread was a beloved staple in Southern kitchens during the Civil Rights era. A rustic, flavorful loaf that carried both history and heart in every bite. Its signature crunch came from cracklings, crispy bits of fried pork fat that were folded into the batter, adding a savory, smoky note that elevated simple cornmeal into a dish worthy of celebration. Cracklin bread was inexpensive, filling, and deeply satisfying, making it a favorite for families who wanted both flavor and substance without stretching the budget. More than just food, it represented resourcefulness, tradition, and the ability to turn humble ingredients into something extraordinary. The preparation began with the basic cornmeal batter, mixed with flour, baking powder, salt, sugar, and a touch of fat, usually bacon grease or lard. Milk or buttermilk was added to create a thick, spoonable consistency. The star of the dish, the cracklings, were folded in last, ensuring that each bite offered a little surprise of crunch and savory richness. The batter was then poured into a greased cast iron skillet or baking pan and baked until the top turned golden brown and the edges developed a crisp crust. The aroma that filled the kitchen was intoxicating, the sweet, nutty smell of cornmeal mingling with the smoky scent of pork fat, promising a loaf that was as comforting as it was flavorful. During the 1960s, cracklin bread was more than a side dish. It was a centerpiece for Sunday dinners, family gatherings, and community events. It paired beautifully with beans, greens, fried chicken, or stews, providing a textural contrast and a boost of flavor that made meals feel complete. Children and adults alike would reach for a slice, often still warm from the oven, savoring the crispy edges and tender interior. Today, cracklin bread continues to hold a place in Southern and soul food traditions. While modern cooks may experiment with added spices or different types of cracklings, the essence remains the same. A simple cornmeal loaf transformed into a rich, flavorful, and satisfying dish through ingenuity and care. Each bite is a reminder of kitchens filled with laughter, community, and the enduring creativity of cooks who knew how to make the most of what they had. Mustard greens. Mustard greens were a cornerstone of Southern kitchens during the Civil Rights era, a leafy green that combined bold flavor with deep cultural significance. Known for their slightly peppery, robust taste, mustard greens were a staple in African American households, valued for their affordability, nutritional benefits, and versatility. They were a prime example of how home cooks could take simple, locally available ingredients and transform them into something both nourishing and memorable, a dish that carried tradition and comfort in every bite. The preparation of mustard greens began with a thorough washing to remove grit, followed by chopping the leaves into manageable pieces. A bit of fat, often bacon grease, lard, or a smoked ham hock, was heated in a pot, creating a flavorful base. Aromatics like onions, garlic, and sometimes bell peppers were added, releasing their fragrance and sweetening the pot before the greens were folded in. A splash of water or broth helped them cook evenly, while salt, black pepper, and a dash of cayenne brought out their natural flavor and added warmth. The greens were simmered simmered slowly, often for an hour or more, until tender, rich, and deeply infused with the smoky essence of the meat. The resulting dish was slightly bitter, earthy, and savory, pairing beautifully with cornbread or rice to create a complete, satisfying meal. During the 1960s, mustard greens were more than a side. They were a symbol of resourcefulness, resilience, and connection to heritage. Families used them to stretch meals, feeding children and adults alike with something that was both affordable and flavorful. They also carried cultural pride, linking generations through recipes passed down from grandparents to parents, preserving a culinary tradition rooted in survival and creativity. Today, mustard greens remain a celebrated part of soul food cooking. While modern variations may experiment with lighter fats or new seasonings, the heart of the dish remains unchanged, a tender, flavorful green that embodies both nourishment and history. Each bite is a connection to the past, a reminder of kitchens filled with love, laughter, and the enduring power of simple, skillfully prepared ingredients to create something extraordinary. Banana pudding. Banana pudding was a cherished dessert in Southern kitchens during the Civil Rights era, a sweet, creamy treat that brought comfort, nostalgia, and family togetherness to the table. Its appeal lay in its simplicity. Layers of soft, tender vanilla wafers, ripe bananas, and rich, custardy pudding created a dessert that was both indulgent and approachable. It was a dish that could be made from pantry staple, yet its texture and flavor made it feel like a special occasion treat. Perfect for Sunday dinners, picnics, and family gatherings. Preparation began with a smooth, thick custard or pudding, typically flavored with vanilla and sweetened with sugar. Eggs and milk were gently cooked together until the mixture thickened, then cooled slightly before being layered in a dish. Vanilla wafers provided a slightly crunchy counterpoint to the soft, creamy pudding, and slices of ripe bananas added natural sweetness and freshness. The layers were repeated, creating a mosaic of textures and flavors, and the dessert was often topped with a generous layer of whipped cream or meringue, browned lightly under the broiler to add visual appeal and an extra hint of sweetness. As it chilled, the wafers softened slightly, the pudding seeped into every crevice, and the bananas melded into the custard, creating a luscious, harmonious blend. During the 1960s, banana pudding was more than just a dessert. It was a symbol of home and hospitality. It was inexpensive to prepare, yet it offered a sense of abundance and care. Families often served it at gatherings where multiple generations came together, and its layered presentation made it visually appealing as well as delicious. Children delighted in the soft textures. Adults appreciated the nostalgic familiarity, and the dish became a conversation piece as much as a sweet finish to a meal. Today, banana pudding remains a beloved classic in Southern and soul food traditions. Modern variations may include instant pudding, different wafers, or alternative toppings, but the essence endures. A creamy, layered dessert that brings sweetness and comfort in every spoonful. Each bite is a connection to kitchens filled with laughter, the warmth of family, and the enduring joy of turning simple ingredients into something unforgettable. Liver and onions. Liver and onions was a staple of Southern kitchens during the Civil Rights era, a humble yet hearty dish that reflected both resourcefulness and tradition. Liver, often from beef or pork, was an inexpensive protein that provided a rich, iron-packed alternative to more costly cuts of meat, making it an essential ingredient for families looking to stretch their groceries while still delivering nourishing meals. Paired with sweet, caramelized onions, the dish became a flavorful combination of earthiness and subtle sweetness, transforming a modest ingredient into something deeply satisfying and memorable. The preparation was simple but required care to avoid toughness or bitterness. The liver was sliced thin, patted dry, and seasoned lightly with salt and pepper. In a hot skillet, fat from bacon, lard, or butter was used to sear the liver quickly on both sides, locking in moisture while creating a flavorful crust. Onions were sliced and sautéed slowly, sometimes with a pinch of sugar or a splash of vinegar, until they softened and caramelized, their natural sweetness balancing the liver's robust, slightly metallic flavor. The liver and onions were often served together immediately, the onions resting atop the liver, their mingling aromas filling the kitchen with a warm, inviting scent. During the 1960s, 1960s, liver and onions was more than a meal. It was a testament to frugality and culinary creativity. Families learned to make the most of inexpensive cuts, turning them into dishes that could rival more costly proteins in taste and satisfaction. The dish was common at weeknight dinners, church suppers, and community gatherings, offering both nutrition and comfort. It paired well with staples like mashed potatoes, rice, or cornbread, creating a complete meal that could feed a hungry family with economy and care. Today, liver and onions remains a beloved, if sometimes underappreciated part of Southern and soul food cooking. Modern interpretations may include additional seasonings, marinades, or even cream-based sauces, but the heart of the dish remains the same: a tender, richly flavored protein complemented by sweet, caramelized onions. Each bite is a reminder of kitchens where resourcefulness met care, where simple ingredients were transformed into meals that nourished both body and spirit, and where tradition and flavor endured. Peach cobbler. Peach cobbler was a quintessential dessert in Southern kitchens during the Civil Rights era, a sweet, homey treat that combined the natural juiciness of ripe peaches with a buttery golden crust. It was the kind of dessert that could be made with minimal ingredients yet deliver maximum comfort, perfect for family dinners, Sunday gatherings, and community events. Beyond its deliciousness, peach cobbler carried a sense of tradition and celebration, a reminder that simple, seasonal fruit could be transformed into something extraordinary through care, timing, and a touch of culinary creativity. Preparation began with fresh or canned peaches, peeled and sliced if needed, then tossed with sugar, a hint of cinnamon or nutmeg, and sometimes a splash of lemon juice to brighten the flavor. The fruit was placed in a greased baking dish, forming the base of the cobbler. The topping could vary. Some families used a biscuit-like dough, others a simple batter, and still others preferred a more cake-like crust. The topping was spooned or spread over the peaches, leaving some gaps to allow the fruit juices to bubble up during baking, creating a beautiful syrupy texture. The cobbler was then baked until the crust was golden and the peaches were soft and fragrant, filling the kitchen with an aroma that promised sweetness, warmth, and indulgence. In the 1960s, peach cobbler was more than just a dessert. It was a centerpiece for hospitality and comfort. It was a way to showcase seasonal fruit, a practical solution for feeding multiple generations, and a treat that brought smiles to both young and old. Families often served it warm, sometimes with a scoop of vanilla ice cream or a drizzle of cream, turning an everyday dessert into a memorable experience. Today, peach cobbler remains a beloved staple of Southern and soul food cooking. Modern variations may include creative toppings, alternative sweeteners, or a variety of spices, but the essence of the dish endures: tender, juicy peaches beneath a golden, buttery crust that balances sweet, tart, and fragrant notes. Each bite is a connection to kitchens filled with laughter, the warmth of family, and the enduring joy of transforming humble, seasonal ingredients into a dessert that is timeless, comforting, and deeply satisfying. Pinto beans with cornbread. Pinto beans with cornbread was a quintessential staple in Southern kitchens during the Civil Rights era, a dish that exemplified simplicity, frugality, and nourishment. Pinto beans were inexpensive, easy to store, and packed with protein and fiber, making them an ideal choice for families looking to feed a crowd without spending much. Paired with cornbread, a slightly sweet and crumbly counterpart, the meal became both filling and comforting, embodying the resourcefulness and creativity of home cooks who could turn modest ingredients into a hearty, satisfying dinner. Preparation of the beans began with soaking dried pinto beans overnight to reduce cooking time and improve digestibility. They were then simmered slowly with aromatics such as onions, garlic, and sometimes bell peppers, creating a fragrant, flavorful base. Salt, black pepper, and occasionally a bay leaf or a pinch of cayenne were added to enhance the natural earthiness of the beans. Some households included a ham hock, smoked bacon, or bits of salt pork, infusing the beans with a deep, savory richness that turned simple legumes into a dish that felt indulgent despite its humble roots. The beans were cooked gently, allowing them to become tender and creamy while the flavors melded together in a thick, satisfying broth. Cornbread, the perfect companion to pinto beans, was prepared from a simple batter of cornmeal, flour, baking powder, salt, sugar, and milk or or buttermilk. A touch of butter or bacon grease added richness, and the batter was poured into a hot cast iron skillet or baking pan, baking until golden brown with a slightly crisp crust and a tender, moist interior. Served together, the beans and cornbread complemented each other perfectly. The soft cornbread could be broken off and used to scoop up the beans, soaking up the flavorful broth with each bite. During the 1960s, this pairing was more than a meal. It was a symbol of practicality, comfort, and family togetherness. It was a dish that could stretch to feed many, nourish everyone at the table, and bring warmth to any kitchen. Today, pinto beans with cornbread remains a beloved part of Southern and soul food tradition, a reminder that simple, well-prepared ingredients can create meals that are both humble and unforgettable, linking generations through flavor, history, and shared experience. And there you have it, 30 forgotten soul foods that nourished families, brought communities together, and carried rich traditions during the civil rights era. If these recipes sparked your nostalgia or curiosity, don't forget to like this video, share it with friends, and subscribe for more dives into the culinary treasures of the past. Which dish would you bring back to your own